May 1945 brought a sudden and total collapse of the Luftwaffe. As Germany laid down its arms, its air force, once feared across the continent, simply stopped functioning. Airfields from Scandinavia to the Alps were littered with abandoned machines, fighters, bombers, transports, trainers, even half-assembled prototypes. Some sat untouched, others were cannibalized for parts, and many had already been crippled by Allied bombing or paralyzed by a lack of fuel in the final months. When the official surrender took effect on 8 May, the remnants of the Luftwaffe lay scattered in silent rows, a ghost fleet marking the end of an era. In northern Germany, places like Lübeck, Flensburg, and smaller satellite fields had clusters of grounded aircraft, from worn-out Bf-109s to unfinished Heinkel projects. In Prague, hangars overflowed with Messerschmitts and experimental designs that never reached operational service. At Rechtlin, the Luftwaffe's premier testing facility, Allied inspection teams discovered prototype frames, aerodynamic models, test files, and the remnants of advanced jet and rocket research far beyond what many expected to find. The sheer variety stunned Allied officers. Alongside the familiar piston-engine fighters were advanced platforms such as the Me-262 jet fighter, Arado AR-234 jet bomber, and the He-162, plus abandoned concepts like the Ju-287. Transport aircraft like the U-52 or He-111 were parked across runways, many stranded simply because fuel had run dry in the chaotic final weeks. Germany's command structure disintegrated as quickly as its air force. With orders unclear and supply chains broken, crews left their posts, paperwork vanished, and spare parts depots were destroyed or looted. The Allied Control Commission quickly imposed strict rules. No German aircraft could fly, and no former Luftwaffe personnel were allowed to take off without explicit Allied supervision. The goal was to prevent escapes, sabotage, or unauthorized movements. A new challenge emerged almost immediately. What should be saved and what should be eliminated? Some Allied officers pressed to destroy everything to avoid any future threat. Others argued that the Luftwaffe's cutting-edge technology was too valuable to lose. And so began a covert scramble among the victors to claim the most advanced machines. The United States moved fastest. On 9 May 1945, American intelligence teams launched Operation Lusty, led by Colonel Harold Watson. His teams fanned out across Germany, Austria, and Czechoslovakia to collect jets, prototypes, engines, and technical documents. At Lechfeld, they secured flyable Messerschmitt 262s. In Denmark, they captured Arado AR-234s and rare test aircraft. Anything deemed useful was shipped to Wright Field in Ohio or flown by the elite Watson's Whizzers to American bases for evaluation. These test flights helped shape early U.S. jet development, providing insights into swept-wing aerodynamics, high-speed behavior, and jet engine limitations. Britain followed with Operation Surgeon, focusing not just on machines but on the people who built them. Teams from the Royal Aircraft Establishment moved into northern German airfields and the Rechtlin Center, gathering blueprints and questioning engineers. The British were particularly interested in lightweight and high-speed designs such as the He-162. At Farnborough, test pilots flew captured German aircraft, adding their findings to Britain's expanding jet research. The Soviet Union, meanwhile, deployed trophy brigades through eastern Germany, Silesia, and Czechoslovakia. They seized factories, unfinished aircraft, tooling equipment, and engineering teams. Production centers in Prague and Moravia came under Soviet control, and captured jets were shipped by rail to testing grounds near Moscow and Leningrad. Soviet designers incorporated lessons from the Me-262 and AR-234 into their first-generation jets. Competition between the Allies soon became tense. American and Soviet units occasionally encountered the same aircraft within days of each other and disputed ownership. Although the Allied Control Council attempted to coordinate recovery, early Cold War mistrust made cooperation difficult. German experts still played a role. Former pilots and mechanics were questioned or temporarily employed to explain systems like the Jumo 004 and BMW 003 jet engines. Their knowledge helped keep rare machines running long enough for testing. By late 1946, most recoverable aircraft had been shipped to the US, UK, or USSR. The next step was eliminating everything left behind. The Allied Control Council mandated that Germany retain no military aircraft at all. Scrap crews fanned out across Europe between 1945 and 1948 to dismantle thousands of airframes. At major hubs like Grove, Tarnowitz, and Flensburg, mountains of aircraft were reduced to raw metal. Jets that weren't claimed for research were chopped up. Some aircraft were burned, others sunk offshore in barges. These disposals fed the post-war metal shortage and gave local workers much-needed jobs during reconstruction. Civil aircraft weren't exempt. Even the versatile U-52 was heavily restricted. In some countries, France, Czechoslovakia, and a few others, German types served briefly in transport roles, but most were eventually scrapped. France built its own version, the Toucan, but ultimately moved on once newer designs became available. A handful of former Luftwaffe aircraft enjoyed surprising second lives abroad. Czechoslovakia assembled leftover Bf-109 components into the Avia S-199, a forgiving fighter that nevertheless became Israel's first combat aircraft in 1948. Spain continued developing its own Bf-109 derivative, the HA-1112, which flew well into the 1950s and later starred in films like The Battle of Britain. Norway used captured aircraft until spare parts ran out, and a few of those machines eventually made their way into modern restorations. By the time West Germany restored its Air Force in 1956, none of the old Luftwaffe aircraft were even considered. The new Bundesluftwaffe started fresh with NATO-provided jets. Preservation efforts only gained momentum decades later. Many museum pieces today were recovered from crash sites, lakes, forests, or abandoned hangars. Restorers often had to piece together several wrecks to create a single display aircraft. Only a small number of authentic wartime Luftwaffe machines exist today. Messerschmitt 262s, FW-19ers, Bf-109s, and the rare AR-234, most sitting quietly in museums or as carefully built replicas. The Luftwaffe fleet that once spanned Europe disappeared almost entirely within just a few years. What survives now is only a trace of the enormous force that once roared across the continent, a reminder of how quickly advanced technology can vanish when war ends. If you enjoyed this, check out our deep dive into the fate of German U-boats after the war, how they were seized, studied, scuttled, and scattered around the world. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more from History Inside.